All right, boys,
Let's lock and
let's
load.
do this. We are live. This is episode number 15 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction company. Boys, I'm going to kick it off here with a review that we actually just got a couple of hours ago. So this is the latest one. Let me pull it up here. All right, this is from Randy. He's actually a client from Virginia. He provides like renovation and like general contracting, handyman services from Virginia in the U.S. So here it is. So far, so good. I've tried numerous different platforms to integrate quotations, invoices, scheduling, timesheet management, and customer records. Most have been either phenomenally expensive or frustratingly useless. So far, Jobtable is making me happy. Note, I'm only a month in, but my employees like it, and I have not been frustrated by it yet. So, another great review from Randy. Thank you, Randy, for that.
Shout out,
review.
Randy.
Shout out to Randy.
That's our main objective, is to keep it simple.
Yes, sir. So how you boys doing?
Feeling good. Glad to be back.
It's
Good,
a freezing
man.
cold day here. As we record this, it's January 20th. It's like a polar vortex. But I mention this because this is also the day of the presidential Trump inauguration that's happening today. And, it's obviously been in the news. But what I wanted to actually first topic we wanted to talk about today was the whole discussion on tariffs, the threat that Trump and the administration is going to put tariffs on U.S. imports coming into Canada, and so wanted to just talk about that and how it relates specifically to contractors and subtrades and just the whole construction industry in general. So I'll try and cue this up for you guys because I think it'd be very insightful to kind of get how you guys, your read on this and how it could potentially impact your business and again, just the broader construction industry as a whole. So first of all, what is a tariff, right? A tariff is, put it in the most simplest terms, is when a government adds an extra cost to items that were bought from another country, right? So if you're like a supplier who buys lumber from the U.S., there's going to be an added cost, which is the tariff, to buy that lumber, right? So that's essentially what a tariff is. Now, let's talk about tariffs specifically related to construction. The companies that have the highest import content from the U.S. related to in construction are lumber, steel, electrical components, and plumbing fixtures and fittings. So if you're a company that uses any of those materials, if there is a tariff, those are the companies that are likely going to get impacted the most. So Johnny, kick it off with you. So, when you hear this, tariffs, understanding like which industries, like plumbing fixtures and fittings, that was on the list. So how do you kind of gauge this? What do you think, could be the potential outcome if these tariffs do come into play?
Yeah, so dealing with larger contracts, it's been a big discussion lately. Like I want to say since he first mentioned it, a lot of people are actually putting in their quote, this is subject to change due to escalations, tariffs, because a lot of times we submit a price and, in the contract, they want that price to be guaranteed, right? Now, if it's a longer period project where, you're constantly buying material, typically it's okay to hold price. During COVID, obviously, was like the Wild West. So a lot of people knew that you couldn't. But now with this threat coming, it's pretty scary because, if you're on a larger project and let's just say, materials on that project are $1 million and all of a sudden, you're slapped with 20-30% tariffs, that goes up to 1.2, 1.3 million very quickly. And then there's a discussion that's had between either the builder, the general contractor, the developer, and unfortunately those costs are essentially, they're eaten up by the end user, right? The client. right? Because it's nothing that you're trying to make money on, right? It's just those are direct costs. It's the cost of goods going up. Now, especially here in Canada, we've endured hard times with a lot of inflation, a lot of high costs, and I think that these tariffs would cripple us, even further than what it is, what has happened to the average Canadian right now. It's not good, but the reality is that he's in office. This is what we're going to have to face, and my 2 cents is we just need somebody strong in our office that's able to sit at the round table with him and try to strike the best deal. They are our trading partner. They're our neighbor. It would suck for us to tariff them to tariff us, and obviously their market is much bigger than ours. But yeah, it would impact the construction world like pretty big here, especially here in Canada. Like, a lot of major projects already have slowed down just due to rates, inflation. So something like this would just, you would see like escalating downfall of, projects not starting, people not wanting to go through with them, people shelving projects. It's not good. It's not good all around.
Yeah, let's talk about like specifically, right? So like the direct results, because you hear tariffs, general articles are like, oh, it's going to hurt the economy, but like I feel like most people like don't understand like how is it going to like impact an economy. So you touched on a couple of good points, but so for example, right, what is the direct result of a tariff in construction? So for instance, let's start with that's naturally going to result in like higher project bids, right? Because materials are more expensive, pricing. So things are going to get more expensive, right?
Increased pricing definitely. Probably a backlog of, just like COVID, of being able to get the stuff on time, because if he is going to be tariffing and there's going to be a battle between governments, obviously they're going to take precedence on the material that's available. Which, we all saw shortages during COVID, which could also, see, that's another thing that a lot of people don't realize too with the tariffs. The second they tariff, if they do decide to go through the tariffs, the governments are going to fight. And when the governments fight until a negotiation is met, if we're on a project that requires a lot of American products, you're already getting tariffed, plus the governments are fighting each other to get rid of them. What happens is, the U.S. government is going to quickly turn around and say, okay, well, American products are going to go to, American projects first, and then whatever's left over, right, those can be sent abroad, right? So we might even see shortages of certain things. Not to say that it's a shortage of actual material. It's just to say, you're now essentially battling with your supplier, right? So, if you don't want to pay the price with your supplier and you're constantly arguing and heckling price with them, what's going to happen? You're going to become like a, tier 2, tier 3 buyer. You know what I mean? And then in turn, what that does is make the projects more expensive, right? So even if we're battling inflation to bring it down, that's going to drive the price up again. And we're going to be exactly where we are, if not even in a worse position.
Yeah. Charlie, how are you reading this? Like, what's your kind of perspective on tariffs?
You guys touched on, what tariffs mean and like, the outcomes of what tariffs can do to a country and to construction. As soon as I heard Trump mention the word tariff, where my mind immediately goes is kind of damage control. Okay, let's assume worst case scenario. We know what can happen with tariffs being implemented. Now, let's just get ahead of this and what can we do to soften the blow, right? So I think a couple things that you can do as a contractor. Number one, if you have a bit of a bank, you could always, and you have the space, you could always keep an inventory, right? Like buy lots of stock now so you can stock up your shop. This is crucial for companies that are, especially that are doing high rise service. If you know what kind of material you're going to be using and you can kind of foresee what you're going to use, then by all means, stock up your shop. Another crucial thing that can be done is get in front of your suppliers. take them out for lunch, sit down, have a conversation with them. If you have a large project coming up, try to freeze that pricing as much as you can, right? Like try to get a freeze on it. Like, can you put this stuff away from me in the corner of your warehouse or ship it to me, whatever it is. I'm not going to pay for it now. Let's say you don't have the funds, but a lot of times suppliers are willing to work with you. If they have the warehouse space, they'll keep a couple of skids off to the side and they'll lock in that price for you for a few projects. Because at the end of the day, it's great to talk about having a strong politician that can get in front of another one and negotiate, but the reality is that's out of our control, right? So we have to control the things that are in front of us that we're able to control, and those are two things that can be done.
That's a good point. I was actually literally about to ask that in terms of like what companies in these affected industries can actually do to get in front of it. So, and that's a good point. Like,
and then what Johnny had mentioned is obviously the pricing, right? Like, let's say assuming that you can't stock or you can, but you want to go even further with it and protect yourself, it has to be built into your quotes, right? Hopefully all the other contractors are going to be doing that as well, because then you might have some guys that are not, that are fully stocked, that are able to kind of undercut you, right? And they'll have that advantage over you in the bidding process, right? So it can kind of get tricky. So you do have to get creative, but that's why I kind of emphasize the fact that, as soon as you hear that word tariff, you have to get ahead of the game right away.
Yeah, for sure. And this is something that often, you don't, sorry, I think I'm echoing, but yeah, this is something that you often don't like feel the impact. Let's say there's a tariff tomorrow, like we're not going to immediately feel it. This is one of these things that takes a little bit to kind of funnel through an economy. But, like Johnny, you mentioned it, like one of the first things you said was potential, like just project cancellations or delays, right? If you're like a big GC, I can, and it's already happening like with like the economy in general, but now throw in the tariff, just like the uncertainty with costs and what's going on. So you can see a lot of projects either being on hold or just being canceled altogether because of this. What happens, if that were to take place? A lot of the sub-trades now are going to get impacted. Job losses, especially for smaller sub-trades, like who already operate on very tight margins, right? They don't have necessarily the ability to absorb like increased costs. So that can really lead to, reduced profitability, like squeezed margins. So it's a tricky one. There's a lot of like second, third, fourth, fifth order effects that happen in these things.
Yeah, and just last thing I want to say on it is this the last thing that the Canadian market needs. Just with the inflation and the higher interest rates you saw last year, and I know some people are only seeing the effects this year, but like we've talked about many times, I saw it at the beginning of last year. This is the last thing that the Canadian economy needs. I'll tell you right now, because construction is the heartbeat of Canada, and when you started seeing massive projects being put on hold, a lot of people canceling, people like condos going up, 40-50% sold, and then that condo going like into bankruptcy because they couldn't end up selling the rest of the condos. It's a trickle effect, and this is the last thing that we need. I think everybody's kind of wishful, hoping for the future, hoping that this kind of hard time that we've seen in the last year, we're hoping to start poking our heads out of it. And if these tariffs do come through, I just think it's going to be a shit show, personally. And again, it just, regardless of the businesses or whatever, it just, think about anything. Increased costs just means increase of the end user, the people that are buying the houses, the condos, the buildings, whatever the product may be. It's an increased price on them, right? We're already taxed, 3 ways from Sunday. Like, this is the last thing we do need. And there's no other way to explain it, right? Like, you saw a slowdown just based on increased rates and on inflation. Add this into the mix, I just think it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And
And by the way, right, this is a, sorry, I'm just sharing my screen here. This is a very like fluid situation, right? Like things are changing. No one really knows what's happening. So, for example, this is actually an article that came out like literally a few hours ago. It's from the CBC. It's saying Trump won't impose tariffs on Canada, other countries right away. So, what that means. All right, so U.S. President-elect Donald Trump will not impose his promised tariffs on Canada, Mexico, or China on his first day in office, according to multiple U.S. reports, giving this country something of a reprieve, at least for now. So, again, you kind of don't know what's going to happen. Things are changing, but to Charlie's point, I think and we touched on this. I feel like a few episodes ago, and it's something we always talk about is focus on what you can control. Right? Like this is happening kind of whether you like it or not. Kind of assume that these tariffs are happening. So knowing that that's going to happen, like don't just hope it's not going to happen and continue doing what you're doing. Like assume that's going to happen. Think about like how that's going to affect your business. So like what are you going to do today? Like what are some actions you can take today to work on your business and for example, how to be more efficient, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like one of the things that you could do, and I know Charlie said it, is again, I look at my suppliers like my silent business partners. So, one of the things definitely is you got to be in talks with them, especially if you have a bigger project on the horizon or about to start, or you're into a project. You gotta try to work out a guarantee with them, right? Because in the end of it, you got to buy from the supplier. The supplier is the one who's buying from the U.S. Sure, you can stock up, but let's be honest. Even some of these bigger businesses, they don't have that cash flow to start, or space to start holding that much equipment or material. Like this is the reality of things, right? So I know there are a bunch of steps you can take. Like Charlie said, you can, if you're using this toilet or this fitting or this type of pipe, constantly day in and day out, sure, 100%. Try to buy a little bit more in bulk and stock up, right? It's always better to have a stock of things, 100%. But the reality is, if you have 2 buildings, 3 buildings going on at the same time, where that requires a lot of cash flow as well, to sit there and try to, let's just say secure and pay for up front and just stock on your shelves for 3-4 buildings, you need a big bankroll, right? And especially with today's rates as well, right? So again, look, there's definitely things you can do, and you can stock up on the things that you're going to need most. But just make sure your relationship with your suppliers are strong. Try to get a guarantee from them where they're there with you. They're fighting the game with you. So as long as you're good with your suppliers, your terms are good, you're up to date with them, you got a good relationship with them. Just see how you can partner, right, to ensure that you're giving them the business, and they're going to ensure to hold pricing for as long as they can as well.
And I was going to say, unfortunately, you can be as prepared as you want for situations like this. But the reality is, if the general contractor is not prepared and that job gets pulled from you, it doesn't matter how prepared you were, right? So in the event that situations like that come, something that actually worked very well for me and Johnny through COVID is having a service department. We're not primarily a service company by any means. We do large projects, but we've always had a service team. And that actually really, like I said, it saved us during COVID when all our jobs came to a screeching halt. They wouldn't allow us to do any of them. We actually had a bunch of guys on service that carried the company for about 3 months. So keeping that in the back of your head, if situations like tariffs come, then if you have a solid service team that's constantly going out there on a daily basis and you're not waiting 30, 60, 90 days for payment, these tariffs they become irrelevant, right? Because you're just charging whatever the going rate for things are, and it is what it is. And that can truly carry a company. And I know for most guys, they're going to say, well, I don't want to do service and it's not primarily what I do, or I just don't want to do it at all. But the reality of it is having some work rather than no work is way better.
That's such a good point, man. If you're a company that does primarily projects and jobs, Yeah, you got, if you want to survive, like you got to do maybe drastic changes, like set up a service department. Because, and why is that such a great idea? Because there will always be need for service. Like if you're a homeowner, like you're always going to need service on your house, your building, like your shop, like whatever, right? So that's a segment of the market that is not going anywhere. So
Service,
like you
we
said, and if you're someone who's like, oh, I don't want to do it, then it's like, you know what, probably won't survive. It's like fight or flight, like change or
Yeah,
or
and
die. I don't know.
Service is unfortunately for the guys that don't like to do it. The reality is service industry is recession proof. Just like you said,
Exactly,
Costa.
for sure.
No matter what, when all else fails, if you're a plumber, electrician, HVAC, roofer, that doesn't matter, framer. If you have even if it's 5 or 10%, right, and you can build on that, and if you have nothing, then definitely look into getting into it. But service is recession proof, and me and Charlie, I can say firsthand, we experienced that during COVID because everything was shut down other than quote unquote whatever was deemed essential. And if it wasn't for having a little bit of a service division, which we obviously grew it a little bit, not to the point that we'd like it to be, but if it wasn't for that, yeah, we would have been up Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, we always preach implementing these things before the problem arises, right? Costa, you'll know this story. It's one of Aesop's fables where there is a wild animal in the forest and he sees a boar and he's sharpening his tusk, and he looks around and he knows it's not hunting season, so he looks at the boar and he asks him. He goes, "Why are you sharpening your tusk? There's no hunters around. Like, you're wasting your time." And the boar looks at him and says, "Well, when the hunters show up, I'm not going to have time to sharpen my tusk. So I'm doing it now, so I'm ready." Right? And I love that story. And I tell that story to my kids all the time because it really stands true that like I said, you don't have to open up a fully functioning service department. But like me and Johnny, we fluctuate between 2 to 4 guys, and we've never been a service company. But because we end up servicing all the new construction jobs that we do, we kind of had to do it by default. But what we did is we kind of like created a service department separated from our construction department, right? And we run it and everything, and it runs smoothly. But again, like if these things happen, we can ramp it up. We can hire more guys. We can take on more service work, and it's already implemented. The foundation is there, and it's ready to go.
Yeah, that's great point, Charlie. And by side note, Aesop's Fables, if you're listening to this and you're a parent with kids, highly suggest that book. It just has like really like simple like life lessons that are really good. But yeah, that's a very relatable one. So another way to think about this, we're talking about a lot of things companies could do, bulk order, build a relationship with your suppliers. A lot of these things are like really financially like kind of driven, but the way I like to look at these things as well is from another angle and just be proactive on the efficiency side. So like what's more valuable than money is time. So if you're operating a company, you got to think like, okay, if these things are coming, how can I like leverage my time or like save time to be more productive, save time to, save on hours, to do more in a day, right? And this just comes to operating in an efficient manner. And this is such a massive, just speaking to contractors day in, day out, like there's such a massive room for opportunity on just operating more efficiently, which will really help you lay like the foundational groundwork in your business in these uncertain times, right? Is efficiency.
Yeah.
And what does that mean, right? Like we can like, man, we can talk about this now for hours, right? Like, so when I think efficiency, it's like, again, relating that to obviously Jobtable, right? Like one of the things that comes to mind is, again, I know we talked about this before, but speaking to companies every day, the one time suck that I hear probably most often is like timesheets, right? And how like companies with employees, how they're tracking hours. Like you guys went through this too. You had guys doing paper logs, giving them to you once a week to your secretary. Your secretary takes that, like has to funnel through these like logs, put them in the system with timesheets. After implementing that, you guys are saving what, like at least 5 hours a week at the minimum?
At the minimum, yeah. Yeah, efficiency is everything, right? And I think even when you are efficient, you're always looking at ways to even be more efficient, right? Like Jobtable, that's kind of like a no-brainer. You're always trying to get more time, do things in a faster, more productive way. Timesheets is a huge one. Digital work orders, quotes, invoices, the way you schedule, the way you talk with your guys, the attachments in the jobs where, you can upload everything, give, your guys on site access to it. So, they're not calling you for the drawings, measurements. That's the name of any business, whether you're small or big. Everybody just thinks efficiency is for the big guys, right? Oh, because if, they're trying to save millions of dollars or they're trying to cut costs. Well, so is a smaller guy, right? If you're a one man in a truck or one guy with, 2, 3, 4 employees, if there was a way to save you 2 hours a week and, $500 at the end of the month, you wouldn't do it, right? Like it's a no-brainer, right? Efficiency is the name of the game, right? And now don't take quality for efficiency. You know what I mean? How do you keep the same quality with more efficiency, right? So efficiency just makes any company run better, smoother, faster, more responsive, quicker, right? And it just becomes like clockwork, right? Efficiency becomes like clockwork. It becomes part of your company, right? It becomes almost like, your company handbook, right? Everything is done on efficiency. Are you installing this in the most efficient way, right? Are you doing your paperwork the most efficient way? Are you at the end of the month your whatever your overhead is it the most efficient way, right? Like Costa, like you said, you audit your own personal expenses every 3 to 4 months. You know what I mean? So efficiency, it's such a broad spectrum, but like everybody should be looking at efficiency to implement in their company any chance that they get. I don't care if you're one guy in a truck, right? I don't care if you're one guy with 50 employees. It doesn't matter, right? You should always look at how you can get done what you get done in a day in a more timely manner, right? In a more responsive way, right? And just to scale it back to like those one guy in a truck, how do you get to that service call quicker? How do you respond to clients quicker, right? What are you using? What are the tools? Look around you. There's tools out there to help you be more efficient in every aspect of your business.
I'd love to I know we talked about this on the Construction Life podcast, TCL. Shout out to Manny.
Manny.
We really dove into this stuff, but I think it's such a, because we talk about efficiency, and John, what you're saying, I love it, but I want to be more specific, so someone listening can okay, I can use this. So for example, right, if you're let's talk to the small guy. If you're one guy in a truck, maybe a couple of employees, right? You have social media, your website, a referral, random referral from your cousin's friend calls you out of nowhere. You're on the tools on site, little things how are you taking down that person's information? Think about it. You're on site, you got a phone call. What do? Do you have a notebook? Are you putting them on hold, taking out the notes app on your phone, taking down their information? All these little things, what could be a 2-minute conversation ends up being 10, 15 minutes. They're taking down their information somewhere, you're inputting that somewhere else, maybe sending it to your secretary. It's such an inefficient process that a lot of people don't realize. But when you have something like an intake form, which Jobtable provides, it's very simple. It's hey, look, I'd love to learn more about your project. I'm gonna text you over a link to my contact form. All the information I need will be there. and that's it. Like you sound way more professional. You streamlined it. You can kind of get back to what you're doing, and you move on. Like that's
You
a
kind of
very like
you kind of
real
glossed
life
over that.
example
You kind of glossed
of how
over it
to.
quickly. I was gonna say, sorry to cut you off because you went
Yeah,
through it
yeah.
fast. But anybody that's listening, I actually did this morning. So I got a call from a general contractor who we've never worked with before. It was on a site walkthrough, so I just kind of stepped aside, and he's worked with somebody that we're familiar with, and he got our phone number. So like exactly like you said, I got to get back to this meeting, right? So I said, look, I'm gonna text you a link. It's a custom form that we have for our company, iPlum. Fill it out, and then you'll automatically be brought into our system. And then I'll know a little bit more about you, and then I can contact you later on, and we can quote whatever project you need quoted. We can get together, have a chat,
Exactly.
whatever. And
Yeah.
just that was like, he was like, oh, that's great, that's amazing. And on this custom form that's fully customizable, it asks for their name, what company they work for. You can customize it however you want. You can ask for social media handles if you want, whatever it is, right? So yeah, he was like super impressed, and he filled it out like within 5 minutes. I got the notification that he was now a client in Jobtable. So he automatically was entered, and now I can contact him later on.
And by the way, I'm actually just sharing. Here's an example of a service form. What do we mean by this? If you're viewing, like this is it. So it's a link that you just have saved, bookmark it on your phone, your computer, and this is where you send people, right? You could customize this form to whatever you want, with your name, email, phone, what type of service you're looking for. You can even attach files. So it's as simple as that, right? So that's a very simple, everyday example that most companies just you do this every day, right? You get phone calls. So like that's a way that you can be way more efficient and productive on just
Yeah.
like client intake.
Yeah, another very efficient way is, you know, Charlie and I and a lot of people in our office, we do a ton of site walkthroughs, and like I said, like obviously if it's a larger project, we'll get a set of drawings, we'll look at it, we'll take our own notes, we come back to the office and kind of dissect the drawings because those are quotes that take a long time to kind of sift through all the information from the engineers, architects, designers and everything like that. But a lot of these walkthroughs are literally like, okay, you look at one washroom, okay, like we need to remove and reinstall all the toilets and urinals because the tile guy needs to remove the tiles. We need to replace all the tiles, right? So a lot of times, what was like our process before? Our process before was basically go there, take a bunch of pictures, write a bunch of notes, come back to the office, and normally like myself or one of like our project manager, our estimator would then sit there and then go through those notes, look through the photos, and we probably saw 2 or 3 of those in a day, right? Where now, now with Jobtable, that it's on our phone, the second I go there, I'm walking into these washrooms, right? I'm creating line items, right? So that they're nice and fresh. By the time I leave the site, literally I'm getting in my car, especially right now that it's winter, right? So you're waiting a minute, 2 minutes inside the car, turning on the seat warmer. I'm finishing off the quote. I'm hitting send, I'm off to my second walkthrough, right? And now I no longer have to take those notes, go back, and now try to decipher, oh, okay, this was for this project, this one was for this one was for that. So now by the time I get to the office, I can now go back to focusing on that larger project that requires 2-3 weeks of scaling and going through the drawings and going through the specs and putting labor and material to it, right? So now what happens is like the efficiency of going to look at a project. By the time I leave, like I got project managers that call me and they're like, holy man, like that's probably like the fastest I received a quote. It's like, man, I went there to go look at removing 5 toilets, 3 urinals and 4 sinks. And then, I just need to reinstall it. It's like, I know how long it's going to take. I know exactly the material I'm going to use. Right. So, like, what are we
Yeah.
waiting for? Right. And
How many guys do you speak to like every day who they go quote a project and then they have to wait till they get home, maybe that evening, to like actually send the quote?
yeah,
Like
or
imagine there's a tool where like right when you're doing the walkthrough from your truck, like send out that quote in like 10, 20 minutes.
I'm telling you, in this project,
Guess what? You don't have to imagine because it's out there.
it's done.
Jobtable.com.
And I'm yeah, exactly. And I'm telling you on like truthfully, without, you know, trying to sound like a salesman, like I always say on every episode, but it just comes back to the fact that the clients appreciate that so much because you're on the ball. They've obviously asked you to go there to look at something because they're dying to know the costs, right? How many times, even you as a contractor, right? You're doing something at home, or you're doing something at your office, or even you're the GC and you're getting a trade to come over, you know, to look at this project to give you a quote. And you're following up. Oh, when can I receive this quote, right? It puts everything on hold until that pricing comes in. So you know what? I've added efficiency in our company where we're not going to be the ones you're waiting for. You know what I mean? We're going to be the first to submit. And I can't tell you, like this project manager, he deals with, you know, 30, 40 sub-trades, right? And every time we go to a walkthrough, and, you know, that's one of the number one questions that's always asked. So, you know, when can I expect pricing from everybody? And I just give him like a little smile, and he looks at me, you know, and like kind of like off to the side, he's like, yeah, I know I'll have yours in 5 minutes, right? Because it's efficiency. You know what I mean? These other people, they're going to 2, 3, 4, 5 walkthroughs. They're coming back to the office. By the time they got back to the office, they're dealing with all the stuff from the day before or the week before, right? So realistically, a $5,000 quote, you know, they're getting to it at the end of the week. The client's already calling them, hey, when am I going to get that price? Oh, shit, I forgot about it. Just add the efficiency. Add a tool that when you go somewhere, right, if it's something that you know what it's going to take, you know the cost of everything, input it into the system, get it out of the door, move on. Because before you know it, you're going to be doing that project.
Another big one for our plumbing company specifically was timesheets. I mean, the way that we were doing timesheets, I mean, it was just absolutely like cavemen. Like it was brutal. And I'm talking like guys are filling out paper timesheets every day. Johnny made a good point on the last podcast. We actually brought this up. Where you could tell guys were filling out their entire timesheet for the week on like a Saturday because like it's the exact same pen. Like you can see the flow is the same. But I mean, it was to the point that they're either dropping these off at the office or they're just texting a picture to our office manager, and then she's trying to decipher this like insane code of chicken scratch handwriting that these guys. So she ends up calling half of them like, "Hey, on this day you wrote this. I can't tell what it is. What are your hours? What's the address? Is it 123 or 124? I can't tell." Right. So just imagine that, like her like spending hours on end trying to decipher these and then transfer them onto a computer to actually, you know, put it through a proper payroll. And now with timesheets, we've dumbed it down to a literal start and stop button. Okay. Like you're starting a podcast and you're pausing a podcast or stopping one. It's that simple. And, you know, guys punch in at the beginning of the day, they push play. The end of the day, they push stop, they enter what job they were at, they get GPS pinned for signing in and clocking out, and then that information automatically gets transferred to Jobtable, and then your office manager can see all the timesheets and approve them or decline them from there. Like I'm talking just that alone was probably saving us 5 hours to 8 hours a week just on timesheets.
Yeah. Another one that I remember you guys going through, and you could probably elaborate, was, you know, let's say you guys get a lot of phone calls throughout the day from guys on site requesting maybe certain floor plans, shop cut documents, whatever it is, right? What did you do before, right? You get that phone call. It's like, oh, yeah, hold on, let me look into it. You maybe like go to your email, try and like filter that floor plan or like find it. Maybe like go on Dropbox, like decipher it. Call like.
Yeah,
your secretary, like to ask her to get it. That whole thing, just the communication, you know, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Then you got to wait to get that document.
Yeah, sometimes 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. And the guys just remember, because they can't rough in or they can't do a certain section of the job until they have, you know, those measurements or that floor plan or those shop cuts, right? Because I might be in a meeting. So they're calling me and texting me, and you know, I'm responding to them quickly because I'm in a meeting. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, and it's like, hey, I can't talk right now. Oh, can you please call me when you're done? Guess what? The inefficiency is I got 2, 3, 4 guys that are literally doing fuck all until I answer them. And then when I answer them, it's like, hey man, I didn't get these drawings. The site super's not on site, or the guy's not here. What do I do here? We've been standing around. So there you go. You just lost money. You just lost time. Now I'm sifting through my emails, Dropbox, trying to find this thing, right? Where now, the second we get that information, we upload it in the attachment section of the job, right? Give them access to the job. This way we know when they get the site, all of our guys know. You want drawings, you want specs, you want measurements, you want shop cuts, you want any, site photos. What are we looking at? What are we supposed to change? It is on Jobtable, right? I can't tell you how much that one is, but I got an even better one. I'll let Charlie take it from here, but I got a better efficiency one.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing about the attachments. So the way I used to do things inefficiently is I would literally go to site with my phone or a tablet, and I'm digging through email chains to find drawings. Now, I'm going to give you an example of where this actually cost us money, because I was not included on one of the emails by accident, and it was an addendum that actually had some crucial changes to locations of fixtures. So I ended up laying out and concrete and cutting the concrete on the complete wrong plans. So that was done. We had to go back to the job, recut the concrete. So, and obviously, like, that's us. We had to take it on the chin, right? Not only that, anybody that utilizes emails will know that these email chains can get insane in construction. You're talking like email chains can be, in a 2-3 week span, they could have 150 replies to them, right? So there's attachments from one person, another. It's just a complete mess. So now with Jobtable, as soon as drawings, addendums, anything comes in, shop cuts, approved, reviewed, revised, whatever it may be, our project manager or myself, whoever is dealing with it, can actually load them into Jobtable right away. So now the second I do that, my foreman on site can open up Jobtable. He goes to the job, opens up the attachments, and then everything will be neatly organized for him. So the shop cuts that were just, revised and approved are now there for him to see. So there's no sifting through emails. Everything is there, right? If you're not doing that right now, you need to go to jobtable.com and sign up for that reason alone, because just that will be crucial into how much time you're going to save.
Yeah, and the last efficiency one on this topic, it was actually one of my favorites. The end of the year, obviously everybody chases everybody for money because, a lot of guys want to close up the year, close their books. And I remember we were back on January 2nd. So, my girls in the office, they sent a few emails to a couple of our contractors, just requesting payment. Now we have one of them that, we love to death. He's such an amazing guy. But again, I want to say maybe just, he's inefficient in the paperwork. So I remember him calling me, and it was our first day back of the new year. And he's like, hey man, sorry, I took an extra long holiday. He's like, I got all your emails. He's like, don't worry. I'm always good for payment. We were making a little joke like, yeah, I know. It's like, look, man, can you just send me an account statement, right? And literally, I'm in my office. My girl, she wasn't back yet from the holiday because she came back on the 5th, I believe it was. And I remember just going on to Jobtable, going onto the app, right? Going into the reports, going into accounts, payable, receivable. Just literally filtering by client, and boom, gave me all the information with one click, send them the account statement. We were still on the phone, and I was like, yeah, I just sent it to you. And he was like, how? He's like, I just asked you for it. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I just went in and just, sent you the report. And he's like, did you have this prepared? I'm like, no, I swear, to a point that after I did this, he wanted to see the software because he was stunned. Right? And this goes back to again, efficiency, right? Like this is not a sell. Can you imagine, again, the one guy in a truck that's listening to us right now, can you imagine you're on a ladder, some guy owes you 50 grand. Okay. The guy's good for it, but he's all over the place. He calls you and he's like, hey, Brian, I want to pay you, but can you send me an account statement? What would you do? You know, you're gonna get frustrated because it's like, oh my God, account statement. I gotta wait till I get home. I gotta find time tonight. I gotta go through the accounting system. I gotta, you know, somebody's gonna have to show me, or I'm gonna have to get my wife, or, you know, I'm gonna have to tell the girl in the office, right? Can you imagine just literally? I can honestly say it's like 3 clicks to get to that account statement for that exact client, and then the 4th click is the send button.
Let's see, John. So I'm in here. Reports, accounts receivable,
Filter.
by client, select the client, done.
There it is. Export.
So 4, yeah, you're right.
4
5
clicks.
if
Send.
you wanna-
Send.
if you
Right
wanna
there.
Throw in the send.
Okay.
Done. Yeah, you're right.
Like, come on, man. Like, you know, that's why I had to throw that one in, because I'm telling you, I know everybody listening, whether it happens a lot or it happens every once in a while. When I used to be asked for account statements, I used to think in my head like, fuck, all right, well, you know, this is going to take another week before this guy gets this statement, right? Because, you know, you got to go through the accounting software. Everybody has to have time to do it. Just that alone, like when I did, the guy was shocked. Like to a point, he was like, he thought that I had it prepared, like waiting for his phone call. You know, and I explained to him, I'm like, no, it's the software that we use, you know, and and like we have a scheduled demo with this guy because he was just from sending him an account statement within like less than a minute.
Yeah. And man, we didn't even get into like invoicing and
Yeah.
scheduling, but like honestly, just on 2 very basic things, which probably occur multiple times a day for most companies, is like the client intake, taking phone calls, like document management, and like giving access to team and stuff. Which those 2 things, a lot of people don't really think about like efficiency and like saving time. But like if you do those things the way we kind of described more efficiently, that alone might save you like an hour, call it 45 minutes a day. Like think about that. Like 2 things that you don't even think about, you can do more efficiently and give yourself back 45 minutes a day, an hour a day. Like now think about compounded, what you can now do at that time. Like that's how you got to start thinking.
Well, last week we were talking to who is now a user, a potential user, and you know he was kind of on the fence on whether to sign up, you know, and subscribe. And I remember just asking him simply, I'm like, look, man, if I were to tell you, you give me $50 a month, and anytime any of your team asks for a certain set of drawings or specs, I'll send it to them. Would you pay me that? And the guy was like, yeah, 100%. So then I showed him that attachments section in the jobs. I'm like, well, then here you go. Right? And the guy literally laughed. He was like, all right, I'm signing up. You know, like it's just like you said, half an hour, 45 minutes a day. You know what I mean? You times that 4 or 5 days a week, you know, by the month, it's a no-brainer, man. It's a no-brainer. Like the only recommendation I'm going to give is just stop wasting unnecessary time, right? Like stop losing it. You know what I mean? Put a system in place that is just going to help you, your company, run more efficiently, smoother. And I'm telling you, not only just for you, your guys will appreciate it. Your guys will look at you and be like, fuck, this guy's on the ball. You know what I mean? Like this guy's not flying by the seat of his pants.
And look, just to like, I just want to put this out there, right? We're talking about all these efficiencies, obviously relating it to Jobtable, but why are we talking about this stuff? Is like what we were talking about earlier, tariffs, all this uncertainty that's happening, getting proactive as a company and preparing yourself for what's coming ahead, which is a lot of uncertainty out there. So, you know, we're forget Jobtable or not, like we're just using this as an example, but point is, in a nutshell, in a summary, like think about ways to be more efficient, be more productive, save yourself hours a day, a week, which you can then put back into your business. Like that's the whole point. It's not a sell. It kind of like naturally went into that, but the point is, again, all the uncertainty, got to get more efficient.
100%.
Yeah.
So with that said, last topic we want to discuss, bit of changing gears here, but So you guys, most people have been listening to us. You know the story. You guys started off just you two in a truck doing service calls over 15 years ago. Now, over 30 employees doing major projects around the province. So you guys have a lot of experience with dealing with employees, team members. I'm sure you have a ton of stories. And this is something that I hear about often, just speaking to contractors as well, about how hard it is for employers and owners to find reliable guys and employees and all this stuff. So I think this is an important, relevant topic for a lot of people in terms of just how do you deal with, because you're going to come across different personalities, the good people, bad, ugly, and just like have issues. So like, what are some general, Charlie, I'll give this one to you, but how do you generally like think about that? What are some like tactical kind of steps you take, and just share some experiences?
Yeah, this is a big topic. This is something that I personally have dealt with for over a decade now. Hiring, firing guys, managing different personalities. It's not easy. So I mean, sometimes you feel like a glorified babysitter at some points, just because some of these arguments that these guys can have on site just seem like just a waste of time. But again, you have to put yourself in their shoes, and you have to understand what the situations are and why they're arguing. And the biggest takeaway over the years for me has been to get to know these guys on a personal level, get to know where they're from, what their story is. And I always engage in a lot of conversation during the interview process. Obviously, you have to know who you're hiring. But beyond that is just to kind of build a rapport with them and build a strong connection with them, so that when they are working and they're on the tools, they have that trust in you, where they can communicate with you if there's any issues on site, whatever the case may be. And then also learning who they are as a tradesman is very important. We have over 30 guys, but every single plumber that we have is very different, with different skill sets. So we have guys that are very fast, but may not be the cleanest workers. We have guys that are slow, but they're very meticulous, right? And they're the ones that are going to do the stuff that's a little more complicated, $20,000 shower controls with instructions from Germany, right? You'd want a very slow, meticulous guy to do that kind of job. So it's learning the individual, and then learning how to work with them, where to put them on the job site, with whom to put them with, right? Because that's another thing too. We've had issues in the past where you have some huge assets in the company, yet you just have constant problems and turmoil with these guys because they can't seem to get along with anybody. They could be, like rude, they can be very rough around the edges, and then you send them good plumbers to work with, and they just kind of, they're like oil and water. It's just like they just reject each other. So knowing how to work with them, right? And there's actually sometimes there comes a point where we've had guys that nobody wants to work with, right? And that just kind of becomes now a whole different issue now, where it's like, is this person still an asset to the company, right? We're supposed to just have them alone on a job site that requires 6 guys. That's not feasible, right? So it's you have to really understand how to work with these guys, and if that means bringing them into the office, taking the time to sit down with them, speak with them, to try to get through to them, those are things that we've done in the past, right? And then there are the odd times where somebody might be addicted to drugs, or just you can't get through to them, and they just maybe their time to go, right? They've worn out their welcome with the company. That's actually, John, you'll probably agree with me here, unless I'm forgetting somebody, that that hasn't happened much in the 15 years that we've been open. We usually are able to work out any issues with the guys, right?
Yeah.
But not to say we haven't had our challenges with a handful that are just very tough to work with. But again, like I said, I see the light. I always try to look for the positives, right? So if there's a huge negative and someone is having trouble being around others, or just causing shit on a site, I'm going to focus on that positive and focus on how to bring it out of him. And a lot of times, it's been actually just getting face to face with them and sitting down on a personal level, and a lot of these guys will just tell you like, look, I'm going through something with my wife, something happened to my kid, whatever the case may be, and these things pass, but they have nobody to talk to, right? So they're taking it out on the wrong people in the wrong environment at work, right? So that's one thing I would truly say. I don't know, Johnny, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. I think the most important for anybody that's listening right now and has employees and has had struggles, what I've noticed, just human nature, just some people require it more than others, but everybody just wants to feel appreciated. So a lot of the times these squabbles are over. I want to say, I hate to put it in plain terms like this, but it's almost like you're dealing with a child that just wants some attention. So a lot of times, and I'm not calling them children, I'm just saying sometimes like just human nature, they act like it. But if you just pull them aside, and like Charlie said, you focus more on the positives of what they do instead of the negatives. And then you kind of touch base on, just lately you've been like this or like that. If you need somebody to talk to, we're here, but obviously we can't have this. We're a team here and whatever. I notice a lot of times like that squabble goes away, right? A lot of times these guys just need somebody from the outside to talk to. Maybe their family's on top of them. Maybe, everybody they look around, their brother, their sister, their wife, their buddies, they're all like, kind of like picking at him. And, he's coming to work and, he's kind of taking it out on, his apprentice or the guy he works with or whatever. Sometimes it's just, pulling the guy to the side and just being like, hey, man, is everything okay? You're a phenomenal plumber or, framer or, bricklayer. But, just lately you've been a little bit like this. Some guys are complaining. I know the way you really are. You're a stand-up guy, and just know that if you need anybody to talk to, we're here. And a lot of times, I'm telling you, like 99% of the times, that shit goes away, right? And sometimes, yeah, it does have a time limit, right? You might have to do that depending on who the individual is, maybe once a year, maybe once every 6 months. But I always say a lot of these squabbles, a lot of the times, is just due to personality, and they might just be going through something. And just always be there to understand that. Instead of just like going to yell at the guy and like kick him while he's down, just show them that you're there, to pick him up. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of guys appreciate that. Like I can confidently say anybody from day one that has ever worked for Charlie and I, a lot of them are still here, but for the few and far between that are not here anymore, I think that they can all say that, they're not here. It wasn't because of us or the way we treated them, right? They might have just been going through something at the time. They thought the grass was greener on the other side. And they would love to come back and work with us, right? So I think always remember to be the bigger person. You as the owner of the company, especially with these like employee squabbles, let's just say, as the owner of the company, you are the captain of the ship, right? You need to lead by example, right? And we've talked about this on a couple of episodes, Costa, but, all I can say is you're the captain of the ship. You need to lead by example. And a lot of times it's much better to lead with, positivity, cool, calm, and collected, right? Than just acting like that asshole owner that comes out screaming, yelling, you do this again, you're gone, pack up your shit, go home. You know what I mean? It doesn't end well like that, right? So, and look, everybody deals with stuff differently. I just think that, the calm, positive approach is always the best approach.
Yeah, and one more thing too is what I like to do, because we do have the luxury of having a lot of foremans and a lot of jobs on the go, is when I hire someone, I don't tend to keep them with the same person, the same journeyman for an entire year. I like to move guys around. We're also very unique that we do new construction, we do renovations, we do commercial, industrial, we do custom homes. We really do it all. So I like to move apprentices around so they can get a feel for every aspect of the trade, which is an opportunity that a lot of these kids don't get these days. But also, the reason I'm bringing it up, by doing so, I'm actually exposing them to a lot of different personalities as well. So I can see how they vibe with different people, and then it really gives me an insight onto where to put them in the future. When they get more skill and they get more responsibility, I now know a lot more information about them because I get it from my foremans, and I get some inside information on these people, right? So I actually like keep this kind of like these things in my head, and I have kind of a file on every single one of my employees. And again, like I think it also comes down to respect, right? If they know that you're a respectful employee, an employer, sorry, then they'll be a respectful employer, right? And that respect always goes both ways.
Yeah, and you know what? Kudos to Charlie because we've seen this firsthand, and I've actually seen, we've hired, guys that are green, which, basically means no experience, never worked in the field. You just got a good vibe when you met them, and then Charlie will put him with a foreman, and not to say that the foreman's not good, but the foreman will come back with feedback where it's like, yeah, this guy's no good. This guy, I don't think he has what it takes. And then Charlie will send them, kind of mix guys around, and he'll send them with another guy. And for some reason or another, something just clicked. It might just be like that human trait that those guys just interact a lot better. You know what I mean? And maybe he learns from his style more than he learned from the first guy's style. And then, 2 years later, 3 years later, it's like this kid's a stud. He's a superstar. You know what I mean? So sometimes getting back, it's that approach. You know what I mean? You never know. It might just be, and not to say, like I said, not to say the first, licensed guy wasn't great or not a good teacher, but maybe sometimes not what that one individual required. You know what I mean? Or how he learns the best, right? Because
Imagine dating, right? John, sorry to cut you off, but it's like I don't want to forget this thought. Imagine dating and you go into a bar and somebody tells you you have to go sit beside that girl and you have to have fun and have a great conversation with this girl for the rest of the night and make it work, right? There's a good chance that you guys are not going to click, right? So it's like, I kind of look at it, it's kind of the same thing. You put a guy with a foreman for 3 months, they have to do their job regardless, right? There's a job to do. But at the end of the day, if they don't get along, if there's something wrong, if that's why it's important to also know your foremans as well, because they can, like Johnny just said, that example there. In that case, it was actually the foreman who was just, overly aggressive with this kid who didn't have the thickest of skin, right? And I knew that the potential for skill was there, but he just wasn't in the right setting. He just couldn't handle this foreman who can, be very abrasive and rough. So I moved him with somebody that's a little bit more calm, that's a little bit more patient, and now this kid is one of our best guys, right? So you have to know when to move guys around, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Another thing, just to add to this, I think something else that is very important here is to remember that like managing people is a skill, right? Just like you learned a skill to be the best plumber, electrician, or roofer, like those are, physical skills, obviously, to be a good tradesman and have that skill to start a business. When you're now the business owner, you have to learn other skills beyond your trade, whether it's sales. In this case, we're talking about managing people. Like it's a skill, right? So you can start off today and be shitty at managing people, but if you have the awareness to realize like I can get better at this, and realizing that, there's different personalities, maybe I got to change my approach with this person, what works with this person doesn't work with person X, right? So like you got to have the awareness to improve that skill. And so, yeah, that's it. Like, just build on it, like improve it. You could get better at managing people. And it's just like, dealing with personalities and stuff like you guys were saying.
And one thing I do want to do, I wanted to say this is I want to give a shout out to, every licensed guy. I don't care what trade you're in, any foreman that's listening, because, the reality is, man, a lot of people don't talk about this, but a foreman, and a lot of time a licensed guy, even though he's not a foreman, a lot of times these guys have somebody working under them, and they're trying to do the job that they're licensed to do and that they're required to do every day. And now they're given an apprentice that they're now responsible for. And whatever happens on that job, because they're working under them, right, it falls on to the foreman, right, on why this guy did this or why he fucked up or whatever. So the reality is that, just imagine coming to work every day and you have a task at hand that you have to do, and then somebody just throws you somebody and says, hey, and while you're doing this, teach him and make sure he's learning, right? For a lot of guys, that slows them down. So and I'm not saying that, obviously it's required. That's the only way to get, more trades in. But, I just think that licensed guys and foremans don't get enough credit and enough respect. So for whoever's listening, trust me, I can say it from, me and Charlie for sure. You guys are have a tough job day in and day out, and just keep doing what you guys are doing. I know sometimes it's hard, but I'm telling you, man, those kids, those green, apprentices, even guys 3rd, 4th year that, you're still trying to mold and you don't understand why they haven't gotten there. Just keep at it, man. Keep at it, because understand that we were there once upon a time. They need the same level of care. And, I know it's tough because you guys have a job to do, but trust me, as an owner, it doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah. I have a question for you guys. We talked, because you mentioned employee squabbles and fighting and things like this amongst team members. So, and I feel like any company who has some employees might relate to this. So, how do you battle with those situations where you have, let's say, a really good employee who's actually good at his craft, but no one gets along with? At what point do you keep this guy on? Do you realize man, although he's productive and really good, do you part ways? How do you balance that?
You want to take this one, Charlie? You want me to start it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's not rocket science. I think you do the things like I mentioned before. You take the time. It can first be a phone conversation. If that doesn't work, you have a sit down and you kind of voice your concerns, right? Me and Johnny have always prided ourselves in being very, very honest with our guys, and we expect the same honesty back from our guys. So sitting down with that person and just saying listen, man, nobody wants to work with you, right? What's going on? What are the reasons? And the truth is the truth, right? So it's obviously it's if everybody's complaining about you, you must be the problem. If there's 20, 30 people complaining about you, that can only, your story can only go so far, that everyone else is the issue. But with that being said, you still take the time to listen to them. Why is this happening? And if you start losing the respect of your other employees, if it's concrete, this guy is a problem, nobody can work with him, we've tried everything that we can, we exhausted every resource, we've sat down with them, and it's still not getting better, then it becomes an issue with the rest of your crew, because your crew will lose respect for you if you're just keeping this guy on to make money, right? So you really have to evaluate that and think to yourself, hey, has this just become now about money, keeping this guy on for financial reasons? Because if that's the case and you start losing the respect of your guys, then it could become a much bigger issue than the first issue was.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit, but I always go back to the core, right? Like Charlie said, you talk to them and you always see if they have, in our company, we like to have that family dynamic, right? So if they're still there and still have that core value where, they want nothing better than, the company to succeed, them to succeed, us to succeed, and everybody around us to succeed, that's number one, right? You can always build off of that, right? If you notice that's gone, you know what I mean? Then you know that it's time to cut ties, right? Because again, don't chase the money, chase the relationships, the money will follow, right? Like if the guy's just about them, me, I, they've lost the value of that, like, kind of, family kind of dynamic that we like to uphold in our company. So that's why I always, don't just jump the gun to chew off the guy's head. Kind of get the background story, talk to them, see where they're coming from. Again, it could be, a hard week, a hard month, a hard weekend that they just had. You don't know what they got going on in their personal lives. But, if you sit down with them and you can see that, it's just about like me and I want this and I want that and you guys this and you guys that, when you've done everything, then you just know it's to a point where you got to cut ties, right? But a lot of times, like I said, 99% of the time, it can all be solved with like a, kind of a face-to-face and a heart-to-heart discussion. You know what I mean? Anything, right? And I think that goes for anything. That could go for family members. That can go for close friends. That can go for anything, right? A lot of times it's just a misunderstanding. Somebody doesn't know how to control it. Even though we're all adults, let's be honest, man. Like, a lot of times people don't know how to handle a situation that they're going through. Something set them off first thing in the morning. Somebody talks to them or asks them the question at the wrong second. They blow up. It escalates, and then all of a sudden, the week's like this. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine a week ago that literally says, he goes, for the last 6 months, it's him and another guy in a truck. They work for another company, and he's like, for the last 6 months, me and, this guy haven't even spoken a word to each other. We literally get in the truck, fill up gas, I listen to my stuff, with my headphones on. He drives the truck. We get to work, get out, unload. We don't even say a word to each other. And I was just talking to him. I'm like, well, what happened, right? And it's like, oh, it's because he came in one day, he was having an issue with his ex-wife and blah, 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 blah. And, he was in a sour mood. And ever since then, this is how it's been. I'm like, well, you ever think of like just talking to the guy and just telling him, hey, man, like, we've been friends for 10 years. We work together. Like, whatever it is, dude, I'm here to talk to you. And he was like, you know what? You're right. So like, it could just be done with a conversation a lot of times, right? But again, if you notice that the other person is so far gone, that to me is like your cue to be like, okay, well then I guess, maybe we just outgrown each other, and I think it's better to just move on.
You know how many times I've actually encountered this where just like a simple conversation like that just has resolved an issue. And I think a lot of these guys, especially on site, they hold their cards so close to their chests, and they're not open books, right? They're not emotional beings, or they are, but they just try not to show it. And I've actually caught guys off guard where I'm like, hey man, I could tell something's wrong with one of the guys, and I asked them like, hey, how's it going? How was your weekend? I was like, is everything okay? It's like, yeah. It's like, are you sure? Like, what's going on, man? Like, I could tell something's off. Like, I'm here, man. You can tell me anything. Like, what's going on? And they're kind of like stunned, like, well, yeah, you know what, actually, like, there is something that's kind of bothering me, the foreman's had me doing such and such for the last 3 weeks, and I wasn't even supposed to be doing this job. I was supposed to move on to this one. And a lot of times I look at the guy, I'm like, look, thanks for letting me know. I had no idea. Let me look into it, and I'll get back to you and see if we can fix the problem, right? And just by doing that, it just kind of gives these guys like a sense of safety and security, where it's like, where like they could have had this resentment for the foreman, right? And like Johnny said, to Johnny's point with the foreman, these guys have so much on their fucking plate that it's probably not even a thought in his head, right? He's just worried about getting the job done and making sure that I don't come down on him because the job's not done in time or it's not done efficiently, whatever the case may be. So this poor apprentice who's being put through the ringer, by the foreman by complete accident, right? He's just keeping his mouth shut. He's getting this resentment build up inside towards the foreman, and over what? Right? When it could just easily be resolved with a simple conversation. So knowing how to pick that up from your guys and keeping an open conversation and keeping your door always open to them is key.
Yeah, very good points. Good discussions today, boys. Anything else anyone want to add before we wrap it up here?
No, it just as going back to the efficiency, whether it's Jobtable or any other software, I always tell the guys, don't even take our word for it. If you go to jobtable.com, you can try the software for 14 days completely free. You'll have full access to everything. You literally have nothing to lose. Everything we spoke about and more will be available to you. You can try it out. The learning curve is about as easy as taking 3 steps out the door. It's very, very easy, very affordable after the 14 days. But like I said, don't take our word for it. Check it out for yourself, and you won't be disappointed.
And for
Actually, to further, I want to add something as well, just quickly. For anyone listening this far, and I'm going to put in the show notes, not only do we have a 14-day free trial, try it out, but I'm going to throw in a promo code here as well, which is TDP6, so the Deconstruction Podcast, so TDP, the number 6. If you use that promo code, you'll get 50% off for the first 6 months as well. So, that's for listeners. If you're listening to that,
can I get that?
No, sorry. You're playing full pop.
Yeah, and listen, I just wanted to add one last cue, because this is the one that I always get stumbled on when we talk to guys. Even those guys, one guy in a truck, I get it, man. You got a simple operation, but 99.99% of you guys that I talk to, you guys all have the intentions of growing. So, I always say it, you don't get insurance after you get into an accident. You have insurance, God forbid something were to happen. And it's kind of the same thing, right? Like your business is your moneymaker. It's your biggest asset. So why not implement something that saves you time, streamlines your process, and obviously you have that tool in place that when you grow, it's going to be a lot less painless, right? You add an employee, your timesheets are there, you have work orders, your invoicing is easy, your quotes are easy, your scheduling, because as people start to grow, right, that's when you have less and less time, because now you start going through what we call growing pains, right, where now you have to start implementing all this stuff, but you're trying to do that at the same time that you're trying to coordinate guys, you're getting guys started, you're landing more work, obviously, to pay these guys wages and make money off of them and everything like that. So for all those guys, one guy in a truck, like Charlie said, jobtable.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial. You get full access to everything. And again, not a sales pitch, guys, but tradesman to tradesman, go try the fucking thing out. I promise you, it is going to be the most simple thing that you've implemented into your company. And once you get used to it, which again, you give it a fair shake after half an hour, you'll know the ins and outs of the whole software. You'll be happy that you implemented it at that time, because as you grow, that is the hardest time to start implementing new procedures.
Well said. All right, boys. Another fun chat. Pleasure as always. And thank you all for listening. Until next time.
All right, boys. See you
later,
next
boys.
one.